6. Immutable. Knox blinked. His eyes were open, yet an immutable dark pressed in. No sliver of light, no variance of hues, it was all uniform nothing. He moved to lift his hand to his face, but his arm flared with hot stabs of pain, and he froze. Adrenaline cleared fog from his mind like a splash of icy water. He remembered flying through the air, instinctively trying to pull on his strength. He thought he had felt a flicker before striking the ground, but then everything had gone black. It was all blackness still, shrieking and groaning around him in bone-rattling tones. His hand touched the cool ground beneath him. Rough stone met his fingers. He found its solidity strangely comforting in the emptiness. The air smelled of wet earth and was surprisingly fresh, free from many heavy smells of poison that could settle into deep caves. A puff of air brushed his brow and pulled at his hair before stilling once again. Were there vents to the surface? He tried his voice. "Terran?" Only the grating creaks of the earth answered. Knox belonged to the sky. The earth represented every tethered evil the world held, and here he was within her heart. A rush of panic stole his breath. "Breathe. You can breathe." Years of training came to bear. "Think. You can reason. Move. You are capable of action." The last thought made him take stock. "Can I?" His left arm was fractured. "That's all?" Some gentle probing revealed tenderness immediately above his left elbow. His other arm felt sore, deeply bruised, but functional. The same seemed to be true of his legs, though he wouldn't know for sure until he stood. He twisted his back, relieved to find he could move, except for the sharp stabs of pain from what would be several broken ribs. A minor thing, as long as they had not pierced a lung. His breath didn't burn, so he felt reasonably assured this was not the case. Knox's head was another matter. A large lump had taken up residence on the right side above his temple, far enough above that he could count himself lucky. Or not. A blow to the head would have at least been a quick end. He pushed the thought aside. He had no right to dwell on death while he was still alive. With the head wound came a throbbing headache. The slightest movement sent the world spinning, which felt strange since the world was lacking. Dried blood caked his hair and the side of his face, which meant he had been unconscious for longer than he had thought. Had it been hours? Days? He wasn't hungry, but his mouth felt dry and throat scratchy. He needed water, and a simple plan began to form. The cavern smelled of moisture. There had to be groundwater somewhere, and his first job was to find it. He lifted his good arm over his head, testing for a ceiling. Open air met his hand. Very slowly he pushed himself to stand. A tremor shook the cavern. He wobbled slightly but managed to keep his footing. He lifted his hand again, and this time his fingers brushed the tip of a stalactite. Terran would have had a hell of a time in here with his height. His thoughts drifted through the day's events. Had they driven off the Earthbound? Was Terran somewhere locked beneath the earth as well? An image of Terran catapulting off the craft toward the tree line settled into his mind. He's safe, but where for oath's sake am I? Hopefully their ploy had driven the beast away. What about Amelia? The thought brought a fresh wave of panic. Stop! She'd been safe among the deep roots and rocks by the pump station. His heart slowed. The fact this cavern hadn't collapsed into another liquefaction gave him hope they had at least driven the creature off for the time being. Amelia would be worried about his disappearance. No, furious. He smiled in the darkness. He'd have hell to pay for his stunt with Terran, and he found himself eager to feel the full effect of her wrath. She could berate him half to death if it meant he could touch her again under a wide-open sky. Shuffling his feet slowly and keeping his hand above his head to ensure the level of the ceiling didn't drop, he made his way forward. To his relief, after only about a dozen steps, he found a wall. Luckily, his probing foot marked it before his face did. Using his good hand, he traced his fingers over the surface, testing for moisture. He relished the solid feel of the rough stone. It was a grounding force in this black void. Methodically, he worked his way along, unwilling to miss the slightest indication of water. He was unsure how long he had been searching. Time felt meaningless when his foot bumped into something soft. The shape let out a low moan. The sound hit him like a thunderclap. Nox dropped next to the prone figure and ran his hand over the body, searching for obvious signs of injury, and found nothing. Pinching the pressure point at the base of the neck, he encouraged, "Wake up! Can you hear me?" Another groan. The figure stirred. "Come on, you can do it. Wake up!" Nox kept talking, hoping it would help. "We're in a cave, and it's dark, but if you can, open your eyes." "Nox, is that you?" came a garbled reply. His heart squeezed at hearing his name. In the darkness, he'd felt nameless, but the simple words claimed him once again. "It is." "Are we dead?" "If we were, we'd be the air and sky." "All right. Good then." A rough cough interrupted, wet and thick. Nox's jaw flexed at the sound. He instinctively knew it wasn't a good sign. "Can you sit up?" The man grunted and slowly pushed himself into a sitting position. "There's a wall right here." Nox guided the man to lean back against the cool stone. "Where are we?" The lilt to the man's voice brought a wave of recognition. "Logan?" "Yeah?" "I just realized it was you." "Oh." Logan's voice sounded let down. "I thought some of your powers were at work, and you could see in all this ink." Nox let out a huffed sigh. "I gave up my gift, as you are so fond of reminding me." Logan paused to cough again. "Rumor has it it's all a ruse. That's why you're still helping Taran." "Who told you that?" Nox asked, stunned. "A merchant down at the pub said the only reason overseers lay down oaths is to get out from under the Order's thumb." Nox had to bite back a curse. "It's a lie, Logan." No wonder the people of Rickon had remained hostile if they thought he was keeping power from them. There were always rumors about overseers and their strengths. The secrecy of their lifestyle was perfect fodder for idle speculation, but in this case the merchant was dead wrong. But he had felt a flicker of strength right before he had hit the ground. What was that? After such a crash, he should be dead. The throbbing of his arm dispelled the hope. "I have no more power than you," Nox said. "My arm is broken, along with a few ribs." "I should have expected as much. You always find a way to stand up tall while coming up short." The accusation stung. "We're alive, let's be grateful." Logan snorted before another cough took him. Nox redirected the conversation. "Do you remember anything from before you fell?" Logan grunted. "I was cutting across the lower corner of the field when, snap, everything went dark. Surprised you got off that little life raft of yours long enough to risk your skin. I figured you'd leave us mortal folk to fight our own battles." The venom in Logan's tone grated. "I was trying to help kill the damn thing, and landed myself in here right alongside you." Heat climbed his neck at the impulse to defend himself, followed by annoyance at being so easily baited. "At least I'll get to witness you meeting the end you deserve." Another wet cough cut into the tension between them. Nox let out a heavy sigh and lowered himself next to the man. "We need to get your chest supported, or you may not get your wish." He could almost sense Logan rolling his eyes, but he didn't protest as Nox tore several strips of fabric from his shirt and traced his hands along Logan's barreled chest. Both sides rose and fell evenly. He probed along the ribs until Logan barked at him. "Watch it!" "There it is." Nox pulled the strips of cloth around his chest and cinched them tight. "I don't know why you're bothering with me. We're both dead, and you know it." "We're getting out of here. Stop trying to convince me otherwise." Nox stood back up, planting his hand on the wall to steady himself. "I was searching for water when I found you. Maybe someone else was dropped into this cavern." Logan's breath quickened. I didn't see Rachel at the pumping station. The pang of worry was unmistakable. Knox let his fingers trace the stone as he started to move again. She met us when we brought Winnie in. Logan let out a clearing breath. You and Rachel? Knox prompted, trying to redirect the conversation into safer territory. How long has this been going on? It's none of your damn business, Logan growled. She's one of my crew, and an admirable worker at that. Admirable? Knox teased. You're going to have to do better than that if you want her attention. Steely silence met him. The response came almost begrudging. I won't have a chance. Knox shook his head and crouched, checking the crease where the wall and floor joined for moisture. Nothing. He groaned as he stood again, a sharp stab of pain from his ribs. The room shook and Logan cursed. Dust stirred into the air. Knox waited for it to clear before continuing a moment later. I'm going to keep searching. If we keep talking, maybe we'll be able to get a better sense of what sort of space we're in. If you don't know we're in a cave, your faculties are more impaired than I suspected. You're an arse, Logan, a right and proper arse, Knox snapped as he shuffled forward into the black. Don't know about you, but I'm rather curious if this cave has a path out of here, or other spaces, or water, and seeing as you can't walk around, I figured maybe we could work together. All right. No need to get snippy like a starving scuttle. Knox ground his teeth to keep from giving the man any more fodder. He made it no more than 10 paces when Logan's rough voice broke the silence. Why'd you do it? Do what? You know, he said flatly. Knox sighed. Of course he knew. The order made me choose, Logan. I had to either lay down my oaths or swear to never have children. I couldn't do that to Amelia. I bound myself to her as sure as I bound myself to the sky. Logan took in his words. You chose wrong. Knox frowned toward the disembodied sound of Logan's voice. Easy to say when you are bound to no one and nothing. You had a duty to your cluster, and you chose yourself. They changed the assurances. I had no warning. I couldn't abandon Amelia like that. Heat filled Knox's voice. Instead you left her in a cluster without protection, chained to an honorless husband, Logan snarled. Knox ground his teeth, forcing his hand to continue its search against the wall before him. I didn't leave the cluster without protection. For now, what happens if Taran decides to move to the capital, or becomes an honorless piece of flint like yourself? You and your new child will be unprotected like the rest of us, at the mercy of raiders, or whatever catastrophe the earth deigns to send our way. That's not going to happen, Knox said. Logan coughed, the sound bouncing off the walls of what Knox was beginning to realize was a relatively small space. I thought you were supposed to be bright. Taran will never lay aside his vows. Manny would have said the same of you. Not me, mind you. I've always seen you for what you were. Beyond Logan's hatred, the fatalistic fear he expressed was hard to argue with. Knox had taken for granted what an overseer's presence meant to a cluster. What if Taran ever wanted to leave? Had he stolen the choice from his friend? A wave of nausea moved through him, and he paused, leaning into the wall for support. He'd assumed most of the anger toward him was because he'd not consulted the council, or at the very least had given up power many envied. Suddenly it was clear the insecurity he'd created for those living in Rickon. Overseers were meant to be unchangeable, steadfast, but if he could abandon his vows, any could. If Taran made a similar choice, they would once again be vulnerable to raiding parties. Searle and Elsie, Taran's parents, had surrendered their son to the Order for this very reason, to fight the constant harassment of nomadic raiding parties that would come across the tumult. In answer, Patrum Solus had been sent to Rickon, Knox in tow, to take custody of the young boy and train them both. They'd been 4 at the time, and from that point on, Searle and Elsie were nothing more than onlookers, watching a stranger raise their son. In retrospect, it was a sacrifice of monumental weight. They gave up their only child, all so I could have my own? Skies above, he'd failed these people completely. His stomach knotted at the knowledge, and Nox pressed his forehead into the stone wall. I will not regret my own child. The sentiment felt thin against the guilt, and for the first time since laying aside his oaths, he questioned if he'd ever been worthy to carry the sky's gift.